Big Ten basketball on Christmas Day. Merry, merry indeed. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Locked On Big Ten podcast, a part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Ben Stevens. It is Christmas Eve, Thursday, December 24th, and a reminder for you all out there, it is the holiday season. So if you are feeling in that giving and generous spirit, give us a 5-star rating and a review wherever you get this podcast, and make sure to subscribe and follow wherever you get the Locked On Big Ten podcast. And on today's episode, we are making history for the first time in the history of Locked On Big Ten. Our weekend preview comes not for Big Ten football, but for Big Ten basketball on Christmas weekend. And there is no better person joining me to make history, to preview a full slate of Big Ten basketball than CBB Central himself. It is Kevin Sweeney back on the podcast. We are glad to have you here, Kevin. And a round of applause, everybody, because he got up to 10,000 followers on Twitter. Goes to show you the great work he is doing covering college basketball and Big Ten basketball all season long. Kevin, great to have you.
Ben, thanks for having me. Always exciting, and nothing better than college basketball on Christmas. So what could be better?
That is what we will do. A full slate of sports all across the board. Of course, NBA, NFL, but Big Ten basketball, and 4 great games on Christmas Day, 2 great games on December 26th as well, the Saturday following Christmas. So our weekend preview will involve that. We are going to give our picks and our predictions against the spread, over-under totals for those 6 games. We are breaking it down into 3 categories. Our Locked On Lock, which is our best bet for the weekend. Our Underdog special, picking a team that is obviously not the favorite heading into that matchup. And then a category of our choosing, trying to come up with some creative names to have some fun during this holiday season. We are getting our spreads and our totals from our friends at betonline.ag. But a word for the wise, if you don't bet often on college basketball, some of those lines don't come in until about 24 hours prior to the game. So for anything we talk about for Saturday's games, we are using what we will coin here on the Locked On Big Ten podcast, the Ken Pomeroy variance. Ken Pom, one of the brightest minds in college basketball, if you don't follow his research and his work, goes and predicts games for many days in advance, and he is generally pretty good about what Vegas sees in that spread. I call it the KP variance, around a point and a half, based on his average throughout the entire season on what he predicts and then what the spread is coming from Vegas and our good friends on betonline.ag. So if you hear Kevin and I talk about this today, it is going to be the KP variance. We will pick it within a point and a half of those spreads. So all of that out of the way, it's our first full weekend preview. Kevin Sweeney, are you ready to go for Big Ten basketball?
I couldn't be more ready.
All right, there we go. Here we go. We are excited. It is the holiday season. So Kevin Sweeney, get us rolling with your Locked On Lock for the Christmas weekend of Big Ten basketball.
My Locked On Lock will be on Saturday the 26th, that matchup between Indiana and Illinois. And with our Ken Pom variance here, I think the number would be 3 for Illinois, 3 points for the Fighting Illini. I think Illinois wins this game. I think they win it comfortably as well. I think Illinois has the size up front to deal with Trace Jackson Davis, but also the firepower at guard play that Indiana really lacks. And Illinois is going to come out pissed off. You know, they've struggled the last couple of weeks. I think they're going to come out locked in, ready to play. Brad Underwood was very vocal about how his guys wanted to play on Christmas Day, play on Christmas weekend. I think they will be ready to go. I think they will win that one potentially by double figures, but I certainly think they'll cover the 3.
The Ken Pom variance right there at 3 is the spread that we see from our good friend Kenneth Pomeroy. You could take that up to 4.5. It seems like Kevin is very confident. Brad Underwood, Kevin, by the way, has expressed some concern about how his team is being officiated throughout the early portion of this Big Ten basketball season. One of those big guys, Kofi Cockburn, guarding Trace Jackson Davis. What did you make of Brad Underwood's comments this week?
I think the Giants, the Kofis of the world in particular, have gotten dinged a lot because the teams are allowed to be so physical with them. I think what's really set a lot of coaches over the top is that now these big guys are getting whistled all the time, and you've seen this with Purdue with Zach Edey, their terrific 7'4" guy. Is they're just so big that their elbows start flying places and they getting called for offensive fouls, and it's really just not fair. Like guys like Kofi, guys like Zach Edey are getting officiated fundamentally differently than the rest of the sport. And I don't think that's right. I think the refs need to do a better job of it. And what Underwood was saying is essentially you've got guards who are flopping all over the place. They're getting every call they want. And a guy like Kofi, who is just so built, he's taking a beating. He's not going down because that guy doesn't go down very easily. No. And he doesn't get the call. And I think refs have to do a better job of evaluating, not just based on, did the guy fall? Was the shot weird? And actually just, watching with their eyes and saying, hey, look, he got hit there. And you got to give those guys those calls.
Brad Underwood making the joke he might need to start teaching his team how to act if they want to get some of these flopping calls that other teams around the Big Ten Conference are getting. You're talking about Kofi being a big guy, 7'1", near 300 pounds. He is built like a blank house, if you know what I'm talking about. He is a big, big guy. And Zach Edey, by the way, it was very funny watching Purdue's game against Iowa on Tuesday night. Zach Edey, 7'4", the freshman for the Boilermakers, guarding Luka Garza. I never thought Luka Garza could look small next to any human on earth, but guarding Zach Edey, he did look a little bit tiny. It made me feel very uncomfortable. And speaking of Luka Garza and those Iowa Hawkeyes, that is my locked on lock for Christmas Day of Big Ten basketball. Fourth-ranked Hawkeyes visiting Minnesota. Iowa, a 5.5-point favorite as our friends at betonline.ag see it. I mean, there's so much to love so far when you look at this Iowa Hawkeyes team on the offensive side of the ball. They are first in the nation in adjusted offensive efficiency from our good friend Ken Palm. They are first in scoring offense, points per game at about 95 per game. And Luka Garza is having an incredibly efficient start to this season, averaging 28 points per game, 9 boards. He had 22-9 versus Purdue on Tuesday night in a big Iowa win. We have seen the supporting cast look good at times. You can highlight that game against North Carolina in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Joe Wieskamp is averaging about 16 points per game. We're going to need to see more of that if Iowa really wants to take hold of the Big Ten Conference this year and as they have their sights set on March Madness in the NCAA tournament as well. Minnesota, though, a pretty good start to the year as well, 7-1, including a big win over St. Louis this past weekend, and that St. Louis Billiken team, not a bad mid-major at all. But the other wins for Minnesota this year have come against pretty mediocre competition. They truly haven't been tested. Their best win, other than that win over St. Louis, was against Boston College in the ACC Big Ten title, and Boston College is ranked 108th in the country by our friend Ken Palm. So in Big Ten games so far this year, they've only had one. They played Illinois, and they lost by 27 against the Fighting Illini, did the Golden Gophers. So I'm feeling pretty confident about Iowa for this Christmas Day matchup against Minnesota. They are my locked on lock of this week for Big Ten basketball. Iowa minus 5.5 over Minnesota in the final game, the nightcap, if I'm not mistaken, of Christmas Day basketball in the Big Ten Conference. So that is our first category, the locked on locks out of the way. Kevin Sweeney riding with blanking Illinois over Indiana. There we go. And I am going with Iowa over Minnesota as well. So our next category up is the underdog, a team not favored heading into their matchup this holiday weekend, but who we like at least to cover the spread, if not maybe to win outright. Kevin Sweeney, who is that team for you and what is the matchup?
That team for me is Michigan State in that early tip-off 12:30 on Christmas against Wisconsin. And to me, look, Michigan State has not played very good basketball. Their game against my Northwestern Wildcats was very clear that they are far away from a finished product. But going to Breslin on Christmas Day, I think Michigan State's going to have had a really rough week of practice from Izzo. He's going to have gotten into it in the last couple of days. I think he referred to the game against Northwestern as one of the most inept performances in his coaching caure. I mean, he's going to get into it. They're going to come out really firing. And I think Michigan State's athleticism will be a problem for Wisconsin, particularly. The Badgers are really solid defensively. When they hit threes, they're very, very tough. But I think, going on the road, I expect Michigan State to be just locked in. I think they will be ready to go. I think they will come out hitting shots. I think Rocket Watts in particular had a really rough game against Northwestern. He had 5 points in that ball game. I think he comes out firing, gets you 18, 20 points and leads Michigan State to a big win. And we start to see this incredible divide at the top of the Big Ten where everyone's going to start beating each other up, and I really can't wait. So I expect Michigan State to win that game despite being underdogs and on Bet Online and all the other books.
What a tip-off to start off that Christmas Day of Big Ten basketball, a top 15 matchup between Wisconsin and Michigan State. When Tom Izzo describes something as inept, I'm sure they are running suicides all practice long. It's like an old school basketball movie, because if he says inept to describe a team's performance, East Lansing must not have been a whole lot of fun these past couple of days since Michigan State's upset loss at the hands of Northwestern. And by the way, Boo Buie, let's go. I'm riding the Boo Buie train all season long. What a performance out of the Wildcat sophomore. Are you liking what you're seeing out of Chris Collins and those Cats in Evanston?
Man, if they didn't lose to Purdue, I would be all on the bandwagon. I'd be all locked in again. To Pittsburgh. They blew that game against Pittsburgh, and it just was so reminiscent of last year's game against Purdue, against Rutgers, where they blew leads early. So I'm still waiting to see. We'll see how the next couple of games go, and if they can build on this win, or if it's something that becomes a one-off. But look, I mean, Boo Buie's a talented kid. I grew up 15 minutes from him in upstate New York, kind of tracked his career the entire way. He could always really score. He is developed as a point guard. He's improved as a shooter, and he's playing at a really high level right now. When you have that combined with the added offensive firepower from guys like Ty Berry, guys like Chase Audige on the wing, they're gonna be tougher to guard. And I do think Chris Collins, I talked to him after the game against Michigan State about this. He said, I used Pete Nance wrong the first 2 years. We were using him as a 4. I think he needs to be a 5, and they've used him as the 5 this season, as that small ball 5. It's put together some really tough matchups. Like he has some issues defending the 5, but you're putting teams in difficult positions where he's on the perimeter and passing and handling the ball, hitting outside shots, attacking closeouts. He's an interesting player. So Northwestern's going to have some different looks. It's going to be a grinder to try to get to 9 or 10 league wins to get to the NCAA tournament, but beating Michigan State at home is a really good way to start.
Northwestern with not a great 2019-2020 Big Ten basketball season, but that was a young, inexperienced team that I think took their lumps and maybe is now learning for it as they get into this season. My underdog, and Kevin, I need to apologize here because I asked you to give me 3 categories, right? The locked on lock, the underdog, and then one of your choosing. And you gave me a great underdog for that top 15 matchup between Michigan State and Wisconsin. I'm looking at the games that I had to pick between of the 6 this weekend, and I'm trying to find an underdog, and I'm like trying to rally behind it. And I looked at the Maryland and Purdue game. The Terps a 5-point underdog on the road in Mackey Arena. The over-under total, by the way, at 136. So I was looking under maybe at that, but I just can't do it. I was looking at Maryland and I was thinking, can I take them as my underdog? And I just said, no, I can't. I just looked at the numbers and I can't, because I really then looked at Maryland. They are 5-2 this year, but all 5 wins have come against teams ranked outside of the top 120 in the Ken Pom rankings. And all 5 of those wins came at home. And this game is on the road at Mackey Arena in West Lafayette. I know it's not the same as it normally is there in West Lafayette, Indiana, but there's something about me being hesitant betting against Purdue at home in Mackey. So you look at Maryland's 2 games against their best competition, their 2 losses so far this year against Clemson and against Rutgers. They lost by 16 and 14 respectively. Purdue also played those Clemson Tigers and they lost by 11. So that 5-point spread, if you just compare the common foe, looks pretty good. I was going to take Maryland as my underdog. I can't do it. I have to side with Purdue. I was going to take the under and even try to wrap that into the category as well, that 136 total that betonline.ag has given us. And I still can't do that as well because that's just too much sweat on Christmas Day, and I don't want any part of that. So my pick for this game is Purdue -5 at home in Mackey Arena, really kind of going against our first weekend preview. And I say, let's do an underdog special, and I can't even do it myself. Kevin, is that okay? Do you allow me to do such a thing?
I'll allow it, of course.
Okay.
Your show, your rules.
All right, thank you. You're a smart man. That's why you'll be invited back. So with your blessing, I'm taking the Boilermakers -5. So let's move on to our third and final category. What game are you highlighting for this made-up category where I want to see your creativity on display?
So my made-up category is the no-feel gut play. I think there'll be a lot of these in the Big Ten this season. Just a game with probably like a 3 point or less spread, and you're like, all right, I have absolutely no idea how this is going to go. I went with the Ohio State -2 against Northwestern in Evanston on Saturday. Look, I would like nothing more than to watch Northwestern replicate what they did against Michigan State and consistently be, one of the, at least a contender for an NCAA tournament bid. I'm just not there yet. I would love for them to sell me on it. They could certainly play that well. Boo Booey could continue his hot streak, but I'm just not sold. So I guess I have to go with an Ohio State team that I haven't seen anything from that makes me like jump out of the gym and be like, oh, I'm so excited about this group. But they're steady. I think Chris Holtman's a better coach than Chris Collins, and I think EJ Liddell will really be able to impose his will on the interior against the Northwestern defense that isn't so tough up front. So I think Ohio State wins that game. But man, like that's a tough one to get a feel for. It's gonna be an empty stadium day after Christmas. Who knows who comes to show up for that game? Really have no idea.
I mean, I love it. The no-feel gut pick of the week for this game between Ohio State and Northwestern, but I think it applies to a lot of games, as you mentioned, that we will see through this Big Ten basketball season. You look at a line, you look at the 2 teams, and you're like, ah. I mean, last year in 2019, it was like everybody was beating up on everybody, and the home team had such a stark advantage last year in Big Ten basketball. You'd look at lines, and you're like, I honestly have no idea. Like, I don't know. I'm just going to go with my gut. So there we go. The no-feel gut pick of the week. Ohio State -2 with that Ken Pom variance on the day after Christmas, Saturday, December 26th, on the road against the Northwestern Wildcats. You mentioned you're not necessarily impressed right now by what you've seen from the Ohio State Buckeyes, but what do you think of the squad that Chris Holtman has assembled for this season?
Right. I mean, I think they're really tough. I think Chris Holman's the guy who will get guys playing hard, and I think my main concern coming into the year where they have enough shot creation and having Seth Towns not have been healthy really so far this season is a big reason why that hasn't come to fruition yet. But Liddell and Kyle Young are grinders, man. And Zed Key, their freshman big guy, is very similar in mold to a guy like Liddell, who just plays really hard, active around the rim. You guys like Justice Suing and Musa Jallo, who are great big wings and physical, don't have a ton of perimeter skill, but are able to make plays. I just don't. I mean, it's not always fun to watch them. You've got Dwayne Washington out there kind of chucking shots, especially when the offense stagnates a little bit. But they really, really get down in the stance and guard you. And I was impressed that they were able to put up 77 points against the UCLA team that always defends as well. I think that's a really promising sign. They got 11 off the bench from Zed Key. I think this offense really is going to have to be balanced this season. They're not going to have a guy who averages 15, 18 points a game. They're going to need guys like a Zed Key, like a Jallo to step up and have 8 points or 12 points here and there. But they're a solid club. They're nothing spectacular. There's nothing that jumps off the page for me with this group. They're just deep, they're athletic, and they play really hard.
They could be a thorn in the side throughout this entire Big Ten basketball season. A little peek behind the curtain right here. Kevin and I are recording about 10 minutes prior to Ohio State's huge tip-off in a top 25 matchup against 11th ranked Rutgers. Yes, you heard that right. The 11th ranked Scarlet Knights are off to a fantastic start throughout this Big Ten basketball season. I wish they were playing on Christmas weekend, but we're a little bit behind because we are waiting for that Ohio State and Rutgers game. Hey, it's a holiday weekend. Kevin and I are trying to put in the work when we can put in the work for you guys. So you're set for both Christmas Day and the day following, Saturday, December 26th. So my pick for my third category is the final game of this holiday weekend in the Big Ten Conference. I'm calling it the Christmas Day overs. It is between Michigan and Nebraska. The over-under total set at 147. And because it's Christmas Day, I am taking the over. It's a thing in NBA basketball on Christmas Day that the overs generally hit a little bit higher a majority of the time than the unders do. So I'm going to think that's how it's going to go in Big Ten basketball. And Michigan so far, a perfect 6-0 start this year. Hasn't been the toughest slate for Juwan Howard and company, but still 6 wins in their 6 games. That's pretty solid. They have the 9th best offensive efficiency numbers rated by KenPom, averaging about 82.3 points per game in the entire country. Also 13th best effective field goal percentage at about 58%. And I'm going to bring that up again in just 1 second, because talking about a Nebraska defense that in their 4 losses this year has given up some points, I'm going to reference that effective field goal percentage again, because Nebraska has been about what we thought in year number 2 of Fred Hoiberg, 4-4 so far, beating the teams they should, losing to the teams that they probably also should lose to. In their 4 losses, they have allowed 77 points per game. And I think against a Michigan offense that can certainly score, I lean towards the over. And versus an offense like Michigan, they are ranked 9th most efficient in the country, according to Kenneth Pomeroy. Creighton, who beat their in-state foe Nebraska, has the 5th most efficient offense in the country and the 12th most efficient field goal percentage. Michigan just 1 spot behind them at 13. Creighton scored 98 points in the battle for Nebraska against the Huskers. So it's Christmas Day. It's Michigan and Nebraska. The total at 147. Take the over. End off your Christmas Day betting for points, hoping for points, and hopefully winning some money on that Christmas Day. Kevin, are you liking the over in that pick as well? I trust your expertise.
Yeah, Nebraska doesn't stop anybody, like you said. I mean, after the first, they only gave up 3 points in the first 10 minutes to Wisconsin in that Tuesday night showdown, and after that, they gave up 20 points every 10 minutes. I mean, they were well on pace to give up 80 to a Wisconsin team that is not necessarily dynamic on the offensive end. I also think Nebraska will shoot it better than they did against a Wisconsin team. I think Latin Man in particular, they use him as that small ball 5 at times, and when you're matching up with a guy like Hunter Dickinson, who's not comfortable going out onto the perimeter, I think Man will get some open threes. He'll knock some down to get Nebraska scoring, get them to 65, 70 points. But Michigan will really pour it on in this one and put up a big number here in the Christmas Day nightcap.
So 6 games over this Christmas holiday weekend. 4 coming on the day of St. Nick on December 25th, 2 the Saturday right following on December 26th. And we previewed all of it for you with our picks and our predictions with CBB Central himself, the man that covers college basketball better than most folks on the entire internet. It is Kevin Sweeney. Kevin, thank you for your expertise, your insight, your analysis, and hopefully getting some people some money during this holiday season after we spent it all on gifts for the family. So that's good. That's what we do here on the Locked On Big Ten podcast.
Happy to provide any help I can to the folks at home.